we go to Will Flanders from the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty to talk about a new tool. I love the tools. I love the online tools. I love the comparison online tools. It's my favorite thing you guys do besides defend our Bill of Rights. Will, thanks for being on the program today.
Thanks so much. Glad to be a close second to our defending rights.
Yeah, just very close second, but second nonetheless. So the tool is finally being able to look at previous forward exam data and compare it to this newfangled analysis of the forward exam. And one of the complaints we all had when Jill Underly lowered the cut scores and made failure look like success was that you couldn't do an apples-to-apples comparison of previous forward exams. Enter the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, and we now do have a comparison, Will. So, as I understand, without even realizing what they had done, DPI kind of gave you an assist on this.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Curiously, they waited till after the election to put this out there. But yeah, when we were, when we had the bill that the governor ultimately vetoed that was going to sort of restore standards, DPI mentioned in their testimony that this tool would be coming. And strangely, they dragged our feet. It took a few months. But now we do have the ability to see just how dramatically DPI changed what proficiency means in every district in the state. In general, across the board, what you see is that a district that be at 30% proficiency, say, is now at 40%. There seems to be a range of about 8 to 13% change in proficiency in an upward direction, not changed by any improvement in student outcomes. This is looking at the same data, just changed by the way that DPI now calculates what it means to be meeting expectations.
All right. So they said that it was about measuring learning better and about measuring education better. But when you actually do the comparison, you see that the graphs look identical. The only thing that's different is that the scores are up, but the graph lines look identical. And that, by the way, is a tell that there was no attempt to, quote, measure learning better. It was about adding points. That's all it was. Let's add points and call that proficiency.
Exactly right. If you heard it, you remember grading on a curve in school or something like that. That's essentially what DPI has done here. They say, well, our standards are too high. We don't want to work on improving accountability for schools or for teachers. Let's just add points, which is essentially what they've done. And yeah, what is a red flag? You look at Beloit. They were at 14% proficiency. 22% proficiency probably still is a red flag, but it sounds more innocuous, right? And you see that across the board from the worst districts in the state to the best districts. There's about this 10% change in proficiency.
Wow.
Purely because of the changing of the standards, again, not because of any improvement in student outcomes.
Well, here's the thing is, our standards were already a little bit, they were sort of attempting to hew to the NAEP, which is the nation's report card standards. That's what showed us that Wisconsin students are 31% proficient in reading. That was the NAEP. Our forward exam was saying it was like 35 or 37% on average statewide. So even our old standards were kind of smushy, right? Now we obliterated that entirely. So the nation's report card said you need to know X, Y, and Z in order to be considered proficient in reading. And Jill Underly said, nah, we're just going to add points. You're not going to be proficient because I guess we disagree with NAEP. And we're just going to add 10 points every time kids take this exam. But, what's the argument to change that? What's the argument that NAEP is too tough?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? And if you talk to these technocrats in DPI, they'd probably tell you they love NAEP, yet they don't want to be tied to the standards of it for our forward exam scores. The argument they made is they brought this information to teachers and said, what do you think kids should know? And this is where sort of teachers said that we should end up. Well, I'd argue if this is where teachers think we should end up, then we ought to have higher standards for our teachers as well, because this is certainly not what we'd expect to see. DPI said the standards before were somewhat ambitious. I think we should have ambitious standards for our kids, right? We're a state that has always sort of held up our education, our public education system as something great and something to defend. And yet we're lowering the bar, lowering the results, and saying that's okay. We don't think you can do any better.
So just for fun, while you were talking, Will, I looked up what do you need to know in order to be considered proficient at reading according to the NAEP. And it's understand simple texts, locate and recall information. This is fourth grade. Make simple inferences, recognize text features, use context clues, comprehend complex text, like complex sentences, Summarize and integrate information, evaluate and interpret what you're reading, and use vocabulary and context. I mean, that's NAEP 2025.
Yeah, none of that sounds beyond the expectations of what you want a fourth grader to do, right?
No, I'm going to tell you what I'm pretty sure that was a little tougher back when I was in fourth grade in the 1970s. So, again, they're saying that we're too rigorous, and these are the standards by which you are measuring kids on that exam. Make simple inferences, understand simple text, comprehend complex text, summarize and integrate information, evaluate and interpret what you're reading, use vocabulary in context. I mean, wow. No one cares. All this is about just shining people on. So when you see 31% of kids proficient in fourth grade reading in Wisconsin, that's what they can do. Not asking them to fly to the moon, right? We're not asking them to solve, to read Dostoevsky. That's what we're asking them to do, and only 31% of kids can do it. And Jill Underly and Tony Evers seem to not much care about that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And by the way, it wasn't just for our fourth and eighth graders. It's also for our 10th graders, where we took away ties to the ACT, so that there has to be a new category now, which is you're meeting expectations for high school, but you're not prepared for college. That's the new category that was created by these changes. So it goes from K through 12, where we're going to be graduating kids who aren't ready for the workforce or ready for college. And it makes sense when you look back at what we're expecting at lower grade levels is now significantly lower than what we were expecting in the past. And what you can do going forward, if folks are paying attention, when you see those proficiency levels, knock about 10 percentage points off of them. And that's where the true proficiency levels ought to be in the state. And even then, as you say, those weren't the hardest standards in the world. This is sort of a lower bar, a low bar originally, and we've lowered it even further.
Yeah, I don't know. We changed the standards in Wisconsin to be a little less rigorous than the NAEP before. The NAEP standards, I'm confident, have become less rigorous over time. And now we're taking away the ACT, also another mechanism that has gotten softer over time in terms of what it would demand a student know in math and English. So, and science, the ACT has gotten softer over time, and now we're taking away that as a metric to use to determine whether high school kids are ready. And we're just trying to, I'm going to preach to the choir here, Will, but it's budget time. And you've got the left demanding even greater increases in spending for education. There's zero accountability attached to any of these demands. There's no metrics that we can point to now, that we can even, demand that we use to show improvement. DPI is not going to keep generating these two sets of numbers so that you can continue to compare and contrast these. And so, we're just, it sucks, but this is Wisconsin education, and you're going to pay more for it, quite likely.
It is. You'd think the governor would be satisfied getting his 400-year veto, $325 per year in place, but now that's the new floor, right? And every year, as we always do, we'll continue to see expectations of more and more spending. We're at $18,000 a kid on average in Wisconsin now, going up every single year, and there's no doubt that won't be enough either, as we always say. Ask those folks what would be the number that would be sufficient to educate kids, and I guarantee you they won't give you a number because there really is no limit. More money is always the answer. Yeah,
and I haven't done this in a while, but the last time I looked up private school tuition in Wisconsin, people who are paying full freight, private school tuition are paying a lot less than $18,000 a year from most private schools. A very high-quality private school I know of is about $2,900. $2,900. So, $18,000 for 31% proficiency and an establishment that just wants to hide the failure. One last question for you. Tony Evers vetoed the bill. Now, I knew he was going to veto the bill. It was before an election. And he vetoed the bill that would have reset the standards back to the old forward exam standards that we already had, which were softer than NAEP, but it's certainly a lot better than what we've got now. Any chance the legislature could just simply put that back on his desk? Because I'm confident he vetoed it because Jill Underly was, in what was perceived to be a tight race for superintendent.
Yeah, and I think there is a potential approach where we take a piece of the bill. So there were a couple things in the bill without getting into too much detail. There's the report card as well as the forward exam. You could imagine taking just the forward exam piece and bringing that back to the governor. I think it's certainly worth a try. Evers did express dismay with the changes that were made when they happened, though in the end he vetoed the bill that would have fixed it. But maybe in a piecemeal approach, it's certainly worth trying again.
It's not. I mean, this is utterly ridiculous. Again, go to the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty tool and compare. It proves what we have been saying about this is 100% correct. And that what Wisconsin just did was add 10 points to hide failure. That's what they did. Add 10 points to everybody to hide failure. You can see it by comparing the graphs of the old data and the new data. They're identical. These are the exact same. Look at Milwaukee. Look at Madison. I mean, they're the same graphs, only with 10 points added for 2025. I appreciate the time and the work you guys continue to do. And hopefully, I don't know, I mean, just getting back to so that we could actually understand how bad kids are doing. It's something. That's how bad it's gotten, Will. We're like begging just to have a measurement tool that allows us to know how awful everything is, given how much money we're spending. That's lowering the bar.
Sad state of affairs, absolutely.
Yeah, that's us lowering the standards for what we would expect as rational legislation. I appreciate the time. We'll take a break on the Vicki McKenna Show.